Hello, everyone. Thank you for tuning into this episode of the Software Plaza podcast. I'm Twain Taylor, editor at Software Plaza. And if you like what you hear on this episode, make sure to head over to our website, softwareplaza.com, and check out all of the previous conversations we've had. We've been doing this for a while, so there's bound to be other episodes like this that you'd like. And hit subscribe if you're listening on Spotify or YouTube or elsewhere. With that, let's get into today's conversation. This is actually a part two, because last month we had a part one where we spoke to the same organization, Sysdig, and we spoke to Crystal from Sysdig, who got into this report that they released, talking about these three levels of security: manual, automated, and agentic security. And she spoke about how the era of hassle is over, of hustle is over. Sorry, similar words, but uh, the hustle era is over for security, and and she really got us into thinking about what does it mean for us to do security alongside agents. And we got started with that, and we said we want to do a part two because we want to dig into also Sysdig's new launch, which wasn't out back when we spoke, but it's just fresh off the oven. The newest release is what we're going to cover in this conversation, and we're even going to get a demo of it. I have with me Emanuela Zaccone, who is the AI and Cybersecurity Product Strategist at Sysdig. And also we have Eric Carter, who's the Director of Product Marketing at Sysdig. So it's going to be a really interesting conversation about agentic security. Let's just dig into it. Emanuela, Eric, welcome. It's great to have you with us. Thanks for joining.
Yeah,
Thank
thanks
you.
for that. Excited.
All right. I want to just start with a round of intros. If you could give us like a brief, intro. Tell us like your background and just your journey to Sysdig. That'll be a great starting point.
I'll go first, let's say.
Uh,
Or at
Absolutely.
least I was faster, so I'll go first. Well, thank you. Thank you, Dwayne. Thank you for having us here. Well, journey at Sysdig, that was, well, pretty long now. It's been almost 4 years. I've been in tech for a while now, more than 10 years, creating products in this
Wow.
area. Yeah, it's
Hmm.
it's been a long ride. Let's just, it's at some point you stop counting the years. It's like more than 10. I see things, I saw things. But at Sysdig, it was an incredible run because when I joined, we started, working on what we can do. There is something that our innovation have always been at the forefront here. And at some point, AI kind of became super mainstream. So something like a little more than 3 years ago, we started this journey. So I was lucky because I was able to work on this since day zero along with Eric.
Wow.
And it was
Hmm.
fascinating, believe me, because 3 years ago we were here trying to figure out, everybody in the industry was trying to figure out all the amazing thing we can do with generative AI. And 3 years later, we are having agents working on our behalf and
And,
just orchestrating
uh,
them. So that was quite a ride, I will say. And it's incredible, because the thing I really loved the most, and I will say, if I had to summarize the things I love the most in general in my tech journey in the industry, and especially cybersecurity and AI, is that probably for the very first time in the tech history, you are building along with customers. Customers are builders exactly like us. So you learn from them, they learn from
and
you, and we all build this new thing together. So it's unbelievable. But that's a long story short. So we will see what's coming next.
I wanted to just follow up actually before going to Eric. Could you tell me which organization you worked with in the past that probably influenced your thinking a lot about tech, maybe, influence you in terms of like your DNA and how you work, how you see the world of tech? Any organization that you care to mention?
Well, I have a weird, probably unconventional past because I started as a founder. So I actually founded two startups. both at that time
Oh.
working in very let's say innovative areas. Like one was about social TV. Before that was a thing, so creating social experience out there before things like Discord were even out there. Then there was another one that was about data analytics, when data analytics for social and digital weren't even a thing. So it was a pretty started like an entrepreneurial journey, then landed into a completely different, when my latest company was acquired, landed into a completely different landscape. So I went to HCL Software, that at that time had acquired many IBM products, including the one I was working on. That was well, has had many names along the years,
Mm-hmm.
but many people knows it like Tivoli or workload scheduler or workload automation. But it was an impressive journey because you learn a lot as an entrepreneur, like go from
Mm-hmm.
idea to build to validation immediately,
Yeah.
like understanding the impact of something. And then you move to a
Mm-hmm.
big company with a very consolidated product on the market, and you learn what it means to actually care about customers, involve them even in something that is solid but still creates lots of value out there. And all of these things together, the ability on one side to think fast and create instead of just thinking to things, but on the other side to actually be as solid as to understand how you gain and maintain trust and you work with customers, that comes from the kind of even resources that you have in a big organization, kind of made me this weird kind of chaotic but still with a eagle eye view kind of approach, tech mind that I have right now.
Right. All right. Wow. Fascinating. Starting off as a founder, then IBM, and then to Sysdig. Wow. Fascinating journey. Eric, tell us about yourself.
Sure, yeah, and I too have been here for a while. In just thinking about my background, I was like, I think I've gone from relatively boring technology to what is really cool, exciting stuff right now. And by that I mean I was in the
Neat.
backup space, and then I was
Ah,
working
okay.
at EMC for a while. I was at Riverbed. Riverbed got a little more interesting, and then the last gig before coming to Sysdig, I was working for the gentleman who both created and open sourced Cassandra. That was a software-defined storage startup. It was called Hedvig. It was not a great name, but we had fun there.
Mhm.
But everything was so centered still around VMs, VMware, and so on. But I saw
Yeah.
what was coming, which was a lot more cloud native
Yeah.
containers, Kubernetes, and this is what Sysdig was doing. Sysdig had this unique vantage point, like we can see what's happening because we're instrumenting at the Linux kernel and we see everything that's happening, right? And I
Mhm.
thought that was pretty cool stuff. And by the way, now that's kind of the standard for how folks detect behavior and things that are happening. And we expanded, of course, into all the different clouds and doing all kinds of things as a part of our platform. The other thing I appreciated about Sysdig and what made me want to be a part of this journey was the open source angle for Sysdig, right? Sysdig itself was open source to begin with, then this project called Falco, which is really the underpinning
Yeah.
of a lot of the security detection. So
Mhm.
put all that together and a great founder and a great culture, and this is kind of well what I learned in as I came to Sysdig. So
Mhm. Wow. Neat. Yeah. Starting with VMs, I'm sure you've got like a really solid foundation there and just, virtualization, software defined stuff, concepts, that really
yeah,
lay the
distributed
ground for
systems and
everything.
and all of that. That was the blessing of the Cassandra thing. Learning how all of these kind of technologies worked in a modern stack, right?
Yeah.
Which is a
Yeah.
lot of what goes into our backend here at Sysdig as well.
Neat. Neat. Let's dig into talking about security today. How fast are attacks happening today? Do you guys have any data at all, any number in terms of, to explain to us this is actually the state of things today? Anything you care to share on those lines?
Yeah, and I'll kick it on this one first, right? I mean, clearly in the eh, distant, not so distant past, it was, there were days of things that you would have to in order to respond before somebody actually got into the system and exploited something, and we know that that's changed, right? We ourselves are seeing things happen in an hour, in 10 minutes, in 8 minutes, right? And so a lot of the research, you
Mhm.
said you had Crystal on, she probably explained some of that. She's a part of
Mhm.
our threat research team, and they're
Mhm.
seeing these windows really narrowing. And part of that
Right.
narrowing now, as we know, is that the adversaries or the attackers, whatever we want to call them, are they
Mhm.
themselves using AI tools
Oh
to
yeah.
plan their exploits to get into systems. Even one of the most recent interesting ones, even, we talk about, oh, well, they discover known vulnerabilities or CVEs and they're exploiting those.
Mhm.
They're now even using, even before a CVE number is assigned, they're scouring GitHub to look for advisories, security advisories, or things that are noted and they will have a CV, but they're finding them, exploiting them almost instantly and letting the AI write the exploits and do it. So this is what's compressed the window. This is what's so concerning about where we are right now. And are we ready to fight fire with fire? You don't bring a knife to a gunfight. We need AI in the arms or the hands of defenders. And that's a lot of what we'll talk about today and how we're trying to help
Mhm.
customers match that sort of new landscape of what's going on.
Mhm. I don't know if you know the answer to this, but I'm just trying to like I'm guessing like I'm thinking of what kind of stack do attackers use, or what kind of AI tools do they use? Do they use uh, like tools that we are aware of some of them, or do they use their own stuff? Do you have any clues at all of this? I'm not sure if your research team would have an idea, or if you've seen some of this in live attack scenarios that you know that these are some of the routes they take, these are some of the approaches, or these are some of the tools that they use. Anything to shed light on just the attackers themselves?
Yeah, and I think it's wide and varied. Actually, a recent discovery that we made was, first of all, if you go back about 6 months, we discovered this what we coined LLM jacking, right? So in other words, attackers getting into your LLM and
Ah,
using
right.
it and sort of costing you money um, because they're in and using that. But what we're seeing now,
Mhm.
especially with folks that are having their own models, like Olama is one that we've seen
Right.
by default,
Mhm.
it's the authentication is not on in the right ways and so on. And so attackers will get to that and not just use it for I don't know other purposes other than attacking, but for attacks specifically. Basically saying, giving it a prompt and saying, hey, uh, but we're just doing pen testing. So I want you to go out and find all these things. Don't worry, it's fine. Because sometimes it's coded in there to not run exploits or not do malicious
Right.
things.
Right.
But you
Yeah.
prompt it in such a way. So that's for one example of a tool, Llama, being used to then just
Mm.
set something on its way. And they don't bother with a lot of, attackers don't have to do quality testing, and they just like set something free and set something and just keep it going until they find something to exploit. And in this particular case, within an hour managed to get into a database and so we've a whole write up about that. So, you know, it's not just the on-prem stuff, but that is one rich target because if you're not paying token bills and things, maybe you won't even notice it for a while,
Mm.
like you would if you're looking at your monthly Claude bill or whatnot. But the same token, pun intended, I guess, the things like Claude and so on can be used in the same way. If I know there's so much going into trying to stop this from happening,
Mm.
from
Yeah.
having malicious prompts and so on, but
Mhm.
there are very clever people out there. That's what I'll say.
Mm. Wow. Wow. Yeah, it's an AI arms race, I guess. Um, Manuela, you mentioned something interesting in your first response when you said customers are builders today, and that it's really exciting that you get to build alongside customers. I found that a really interesting thought. I was wanting to, have you share a bit more about what you're seeing in terms of what customers are actually building, and from there, tell us also from the security point of view, what are some things you see them leaving, security gaps in what they're building, the most common ones, and some examples that you've seen out there?
Well, I can tell you that in general, during our AI journey, we saw this happening many times. Customers that were also trying to find their own solution. The difference is in what enabled them to do so. So, if 3 years ago, for example, everybody was experimenting with ChatGPT at the time, so OpenAI was the most powerful model out there. Everybody was trying to figure out what to do with those tools, but there were
Mm,
some horrible from a security standpoint kind of issues out there. So you couldn't
mm,
go on ChatGPT and copy and paste your own sensible data to just get an answer about what that event you were investigating was about, because you were giving away some of your internal data and stuff that you wanted to maintain private. So
mm,
there were some sort of limitation on what could be done. Last year, in 2025, the agentic wave started rising. So everybody started experimenting. It was the era when NCP came out and everybody was like, oh my God, we can connect everything, create tools, and now we can connect our own LLM and finally start building our own workflows. There was just a
right.
little piece still missing out there, that was exactly
Mm,
having a single, powerful, common interface that was able to kind of properly let you flourish your workflows as you want, and connect all the sources that you have, and so on and so forth. When Cloud
mm,
Code, especially Cloud Code, it's not the only one. There is Codex out there, there is Cursor, that's true, but Cloud Code, it like the very very big thing, and everybody started building with that. At that time, when I was talking to the very same customers that were with us on this journey, and I was telling them the latest and greatest we were working on for our AI features inside the UI, so inside the traditional product. That's where they started asking questions like, hey guys, I noticed that you have an NCP server, do you also have this or that other tool? I was curious, like, what are you trying to build out there? Why are you asking? And they started describing landscapes that were like, well, the single pane of glass we have all been looking for since forever in security. We have multiple tools that we need to deal with because our security overview comes from multi-tools. We also have different tools that we integrate as part of our workflows, depending on the team. But yeah, third-party tools that we need to operate, PagerDuty, Jira, all the classical stuff, GitHub, all the classical stuff that we all use. And we're like, and these allow us to actually orchestrate and recreate these workflows. And that's where, it starts like a spot feedback, and then you start seeing the same from more than one customers, everybody trying to solve their pain points. For example, recreating a SOC team. How does a SOC team operate? There is this, and this other thing. It's a pretty classical and defined process. And they were literally recreating all of the process from triage on to understand things like, was this benign, or was this a real alert, something I need to pay my attention to? They were trying to do the same with vulnerability management, or with things like, posture assessment. So at some point you were like, okay, so basically let me understand, we are trying to recreate the very same flow that you have available inside the traditional UI driven products your own way. And they were like, yeah, because our team work this way, these other team work this other way. And you realize two things at that point. First of all, there is a real need out there. It's not a spot feedback, it's a pattern. And the pattern is telling you about the trend that's out there just set to explode. And the second one
mm,
is that basically that pattern is also telling you that there is a need out there, something that you might build for them to give them trust. Because once you start connecting all the things in a workflow, how are you actually giving them, enable them to achieve the most they can achieve out there? That's how the whole idea working and talking with customers, that's how the whole idea of Headless Cloud Security came up, because we realized people were already doing this, but they were lacking the kind of reliability, trust that only comes when you can leverage the power of more than 10 years of experience in cybersecurity, just by leveraging the right skills out there. And this
mm,
address just your first question. The second one is
mm,
trickier, but connected to this one, because it's the usual. it's kind of the other side of the coin, because when you talk to customers that are builders like us, no, and they say, okay, so that's amazing. So you created this thing and that other thing and this other agent. Are you securing those agents? Everybody's like, we know. I mean, so everybody is actually aware that that is the other big thing. Because at this point, even if it's relatively new, all of these creating workflows with Claude Code and in general AI coding agents, so using AI for cybersecurity, on the other side, this security for AI that is so obvious, that is key in this conversation, is still a little bit overlooked, meaning that everybody knows that is necessary, but it's like we are trying to give an answer to all of these along the way, because this is proliferating so fast that now we are trying,
Right.
everybody's trying to find what's the right way to do that. So yes,
Mm-hmm.
there is a gap, but everybody's trying to still figure out what's the best answer to that gap one, and what's the
Mm-hmm.
right answer, not just the best one, but what is this, so what it will look like. So we will see. That's, I guess, the next, I will bet, the next big thing out there.
Yeah, yeah. Wow, that's a great response, quite detailed. I wanted to ask from that about just the state of these organizations, because AI adoption is happening quite like in a disorganized way, in the sense it's not always top down. A lot of times there's
Yes.
people doing their own thing within the organization, and bringing in their own agents and connecting them, maybe shadow AI. I've been hearing
Yes.
that. And so considering all of that, traditionally security has been done more top down, uh, but now that model is kind of, it's not very applicable, given AI and just how differently different organizations adopt it. Uh, this being the case, what are you seeing in terms of how organizations are approaching this, saying, this is how we should secure uh, AI, the way we work with AI, and where do they start? What makes them even see that we need to secure AI? Is it an attack that actually happens, or something smaller, or do you think people are generally now just now that they're starting to invest more in AI, the natural thing is to think of security? What are you seeing as you speak to people out there?
So honestly, in my experience, I saw kind of three phases in all of these. So a couple of years ago, people were still asking permission to their company. So when
Mm-hmm.
we launched the very first AI solution that we had there, it was an assistant. People were asked explicitly. I remember, because I asked all of our customers in the beta, do you want this to be enabled by default? No, because we need to ask permission. So please make it so that we need an admin. So not every user in our organization, an admin, to actually decide that you can enable that. And you thought, okay, that's fine. No, I spent lots, believe me, of meetings talking to the legal team of our competitors, just explaining them how we were security, their privacy and their data, and all of that came along, because of course behind the scene you're using specific AI models out there. So it actually makes sense. I used to say that trust is the currency of AI, because you could feel that. It was out there,
Mm-hmm.
it was something true. But then AI sneaked into the companies. So people started using that to create code, to validate code, to test it, to start summarizing document, to start speeding up their daily operations, streamline what they were already doing. I was at a conference last year. I won't say which one this was, but at some point I stopped and I was like, how many of you are using AI at work? And everybody was like, oh, yeah, yeah, me. Okay. How many of you ask permission to use AI? Everybody was like, how many of you will stop using AI just because you weren't specifically authorized? And nobody raised the hand because they don't want to. What's happening? So there was a phase where you could block this. There was another one where, and I recognized shadow AI it's an issue there, because you don't ask for permission. You just want to speed up your job. So you start experimenting with things. That's a matter of fact. But at that point, it was too big. So now, for example, with the rise of AI coding agents, and the major awareness that now company have, even legal teams inside companies. So they started, creating governance, trying to create processes and something that kind of regulate all of these. It's not that easy, for example, to get necessarily access to these tools. But one of the things that always comes up when you talk, especially to customers that are still trying to get there, so eventually they want to adopt these tools because they recognize the value, but they might have internal resistance. When you show them the demo, they're like, "That's exactly what we are trying to build. Can we use these as a lever to ask our managers to actually give them a reason why they should allow us to use platforms like Cloud Code?" But with a huge difference, and this kind of impact what we are talking about, impact security. Before, when you were talking about generative AI, using AI models out there to provide an AI powered features, you as a company were also responsible for how you're managing data and privacy of your customers' data. When it comes about the headless approach, so when you're saying, "I'm going to pack for you the best skills out there so that you can run all of the synapse workflows that you need to run," you're just providing the skills. What happens in your AI coding agents, how you manage that, what are you going to tell it about, it's on you, customer. So that kind of changed the balance of the conversation, and also the responsibility of where security stands and what is your position versus me as the provider of that. So it's still ongoing, but an interesting one, I guess.
I wanted to add that there's kind of two or three things really that we've done to try and answer that call for
Right.
being more secure when we're using AI. One, discovery, so that you mentioned shadow AI, so that if we recognize that libraries from, name your tool or your model, that they're resident in the environment where Sysdig is, we're going to flag that for you. We'll flag it as potential risk. And so that was a good start, right? Emanuela talked about coding agents. We have this ability to see behaviors, as I was mentioning, one of the reasons why I came to Sysdig. So we also, again, thanks to the tooling that we get from the Falco project, implemented the ability to identify coding agent tooling specifically and to watch for behaviors that they're executing. Now, we're not looking at the prompts and things like that. There's a lot that can go into this recipe, but to see, hey, yes, that's there, and these kind of activities are emanating from it or being commanded by it. So we can give you that visibility and insight. The third thing is simply this, like earlier I mentioned, like one of the threats is somebody found an OLAMA that didn't have authentication set up. It's just classic security,
Mhm.
posture controlling, right?
Right.
Uh, and doing the things that you should be doing, whether it's an AI workload or not. There's a lot of things that are unique about AI, but it's also another workload running on infrastructure, could be in the cloud, could be on-prem. So
Mm.
do follow the run books and the playbooks for securing any workload, first and foremost. Then you can layer on top of it additional detection capabilities, additional alerting, and so on.
All right, all right. Wow. Yeah, I want to get into a bit more talking about just the solution that Sysdig has come up with. And your latest release as well talks a lot to that. It's called Headless Cloud Security. Tell us a bit about it and the approach you've taken with this and how it addresses the threats that we just spoke about.
Just before we launched our headless solution, for those watching, you saw that Salesforce had a big headless announcement. And the idea there was, hey, you don't need to log in anymore. You can access all that data, all that insight from anywhere you want, Slack or other tooling. How? Well, we've got APIs, we've got MCP server. You just can choose your own adventure, so to speak, but still get the same rich data. This concept's been around a while, right? Separate the intelligence, the insights from the user interface. Um, and now we're seeing it again as an AI point of view or an AI discipline using, again, MCP servers to get to whatever data sources you want. Headless
Hmm.
as a concept is, hey, as Emanuela was explaining earlier, I don't really want to log into your UI anymore. I'm going to build my own workflows. We've all been encouraged to use AI tooling. I just want to do it from there, but I want to make sure I still get access to the insights that I have come to rely on from my security tooling. So
Mm-hmm.
that brought us to where we are now and what we launched, which is, it wasn't just, okay, go ahead and use our APIs, as Emanuela was describing. It was saying, okay, not only have we made those available and you have Sysdig MCP servers you can tap into in all the different regions where we run as a SaaS platform, we've built these agent skills. I think this was originally born in Anthropic. It really, between us, it's nothing more than a markdown file. But it's a markdown file that gives instructions and takes what might be just a general purpose LLM or AI solution. They access that and they go, aha, now I know how to be an expert in using Sysdig. I know
Mm-hmm.
the do's and don'ts. I understand what data is available. I can use different ones, different skills depending on what I'm up to. Maybe I'm investigating a vulnerability. Maybe I'm
Mm-hmm.
more interested in what's firing right now in my environment that's been, threat detection, what's been reported, and start to tie all these things together with the agents working on your behalf. And so that's really what headless cloud security is using your own AI interface and agents, AI coding agents like Claude Code to do the
Mm-hmm.
job of securing your environment. And that we
Okay.
see some advantages, and then I'll have Emanuela chime in. We see advantages, obviously, of speed. In other words, I can actually have things that I set in motion that give me insights instantly. Maybe it sends it to a Slack channel. So I know, again, working wherever I'm used to working, not necessarily in the Sysdig UI. We all love our UIs. We've spent so much time building them, but it
Mm-hmm.
almost is becoming an artifact of the past. So this is really what headless cloud security is all about, letting you kind of get at the data, but use AI to be the operator. And now the humans become orchestrators, right? I'm the one that's saying, here's my goal, or here's my risk, you know, uh, tolerance, or here's the kind of things that I allow, don't want to allow. And so make sure that you're letting me know anytime these things are happening. I need to send a report to my boss, help me build that report. All these kind of things become possible in this new world.
Yeah, yeah. I'm hearing you say, dashboards are kind of going out of fashion and that, headless is way more powerful in some ways. But let's say I'm still not feeling it. Someone listening to this, still, I love my dashboards and I like custom dashboards even more.
Yeah.
Give us a use case, that you would say to someone like that to say, this is what you can do with headless that you can not do with dashboards.
You see, I mean, if I can address this one. You see, it's not this or that other thing. Even inside the very same company, you might talk to a user that is absolutely in love with the dashboard, even not just the custom one, even just the standard one, let's say the out of the
Hmm.
box one, as
Hmm.
well as inside the very same company another team that is so skilled that they preferred instead to use headless. Indeed,
Hmm.
even when you think about AI in general, no, it's not like okay, I know everything about AI or I know nothing. It's more like sort of a spectrum. So you might
Hmm.
have customers that are starting their AI maturity journey that are the perfect customers in the UI for features like AI Assistant, the traditional one, the generative AI one we were mentioning at the
Right.
beginning. It's perfectly fine for them because they're using
Yeah.
the dashboards. They just need eventually an AI assistant that knows the context, knows what they're looking at, and wants to answer a
Hmm.
question. But you
Yeah.
might have along this way customers that are more mature. So they might still want to use the UI, but with a guided AI driven experience because they trust AI enough. They already, let's say have another piece on that AI journey. And then you might have very AI mature customers that are completely detached from the UI and start
Hmm.
doing that. These customers, these users are the same ones that years ago were already using scripts to use and connect all of the tools they need out there and leverage the API instead of going to the UI. So the thing with the UI is It's not really like it's something that is out of fashion. It has its own fashion, its own style, but it
Mm,
was, and that's exactly how every UI is meant to be. It's a one size fit all. And that's also where the
mm,
secret sauce of every vendor is. I'm providing you my view on what are the dashboard and metrics that are relevant to you, because my experience tell me that these might be the things that you really care about when it comes about vulnerability, comes about posture, or it comes about runtime.
mm,
Now, at this point, with the speed of attack that we have, with all of the richness also of data that we have out there, I'm not saying that is not enough, but there are other ways I can access those data in a way that is more tailored to me. So if my team is skilled enough or has that need, eventually headless is the way. Otherwise, AI UI still keeps being the place to be. So long story short, being able to provide a compelling, reliable, trustworthy AI on one side, UI on one side, but also a headless kind of approach on the other is kind of covering a pretty wide spectrum of customer needs or customer habits at the end of the day, because what we want is for them to be as fast as possible. The goal is meet customers where they are. So we really want to enable them to work as they prefer for what they need to achieve out there.
And Twain, we
yeah,
talk a
yeah,
lot about outcomes. Like everyone, the goal is to get the right outcome, like being secure,
yeah.
getting on top of threats. And you can get there with the UI. We
Mm,
just, as Emmanuel, I think just said, we think you can get there faster, leveraging the power of AI, especially
yeah.
when you are short-staffed, which is common, right?
Mm, mm,
And it's almost like I get my own team, and that becomes a force multiplier. That's one of the differences. But
mm,
again, our goal is to focus. What do you need to achieve? Are there certain SLAs you need to hit? Here's a way that you can achieve that. And again, it's not that you couldn't do that with standard Sysdig
right.
UI, but
That's great.
adding AI in the mix really does make a difference.
Mm, mm. Neat. Yeah, yeah. I get it. Yeah, it's like a choose your own adventure, and you can meet any end of the spectrum, and that's pretty cool. One thing that comes to my mind is talking about Claude Code. Claude Code knows everything, of course, and so you build something with Claude Code, and then you tell it, okay, go secure that thing. It'll do something. It'll go and install some tool. It'll change some authorization. It'll do something to do some security thing. Um, so why someone could be thinking, if I can build complex stuff with Claude Code, why can't I use Claude Code to secure the same complex stuff that I build? What would you say to that person? And tell us a bit as well about just kind of the stuff you built into your headless cloud security offering that really activates Claude Code and gets the most out of it.
I'm gonna lay
I'm
that one
I'm
right with you, Emmanuel. I have what's in my head.
exactly. I was like, do I tell about it or do I show it? Because
Oh, yeah,
it's
yeah,
so
we're getting into
powerful.
the demo in just a minute.
I want to show you because it's more powerful when you see it. But I can
Yeah,
tell
yeah.
you a reason behind the scene. So the idea, the concept was the easy one that we were describing. So to us, once we started observing the pattern I described, we decided, okay, so let's actually infuse all of our security expertise and allow our customers to actually leverage and run all of our Synapse workflows into their AI coding agents. So let's create a plugin and pack skills inside of that and keep adding more and more so that customers can rebuild this workflow. As easy as this. Human become orchestrator, tailored experience, NCP server and API as the foundational layer and basis. Based on that, we started iterating on the skills. So right now, for example, we have out there available 7 skills. And when I say out there, it's because they are literally publicly available. So if there is a public rep on GitHub where they are listed, and you see these skills spans from span from vulnerability management to the runtime realm, all the way down to onboarding. If you are just getting started and need to onboard a bunch of, cloud resources, or even in the posture area, create custom control and enforce custom policies based on that. All of the classical stuff that can really speed up what customers do. But the point was, okay, that's amazing. I have a single plugin. I can, get all of these skills, and this is just what we are getting started with. So we are adding a bunch more. And at the end of the day, what do I obtain? I obtain that I can simply come here and ask very simple question like, what are my top 5 wounds? And ideally, for example, as a user, not as a Sysdigger, but a customer, someone that is using this skill for the very first time, one of the things that I will find out is not just that, okay, there is a skill for this, but also know what these skills do. So all of our skills, for example, will always start with this. I'm telling you what the skill is about, what it will do, and what it won't do, so that transparently you will be aware exactly of where the guardrails are. And not just that, because if the goal with Headless is to make this experience custom for you and the way you work, and it can learn along the way, because that's the whole point. No, otherwise it's like a UI is the same for everyone. No, the point was making these skills so that the agent will learn how I work, because we said at the beginning there are no two security teams, one like the other. Different companies, different processes, different workflows. I could even tell, look, I have these 3 other guardrails that you need to take into account. Save it in your memory. So there is a state in the memory that our skills will always say, so that the agent next time will know exactly how I work. And it will ask me or tell me, kill this pod in that specific area to solve these, to fix this vulnerability. Because eventually I would have told, this is my guardrail. Don't do that. And even here, one of the things that I will get is also a visibility of the tool, aside from the skill, the tool that eventually will be used by these skills, so that again, this is not a black box. I'm completely aware of what this skill is going to do. So I will know in advance that there is an NCP server behind the scene. Of course, that was part of the experience of the very first time you install these. There are some connections like Jira or GitHub that eventually will be useful exactly to land and to get where I'm going. So there are things that will make me trust this kind of. So give me an idea what I'm going to do or what I should expect from this skill. Now, if my connection doesn't die because it was giving me weird signals, you see what I'm being presented with, and that's where kind of we see what it means to actually what's the difference between what Eric was saying, just expose a set of API or an NCP server, or instead provide customers with a skill, so with intelligence behind the scene. In this case, this intelligence is visible in the fact that it's telling me, look, I can help you, but you need to tell me what outcome, what metrics are you trying to improve out there? What matters to you? Because according to what matters to you, I will prioritize these vulnerabilities for you. So for example, if I'm someone that really care about reducing the exposure time, because I don't want my vulnerabilities to be out there for forever, that will be my go-to way. But all of the intelligence behind the scene, all of the data behind the scenes that I'm leveraging comes from Sysdig. All of the intelligent piece of the story comes exactly from there. So it's not just about presenting some APIs out there. It's about letting me do something with those. And my original question was, tell me about my top 5 vulnerabilities. Now I know what they are in a context where I'm exactly know what I'm trying to achieve, which is reducing the exposure time. I'm getting the list. I'm getting some insights. So I'm even getting an assessment about those so I can take an informed decision. Again, I want to orchestrate this one. I don't want to spend time trying to understand this. I got AI for that. So let's say that eventually I might want to remediate the third one, so these wave cards and so on, which is still relevant because when you look at the percentage of findings that actually are affected by this one, it's it's still an interesting one I want to deep dive. And the first two, as it correctly states, are closed. So I really want to see what this is about. And I will say, let's go with free. So I started with a simple question and now going level deeper, getting more and more context. Context that usually will take me really, really a while to get there. And this is just vulnerability management. Imagining runtime, how this is relevant. I promise I will show you a couple of reports of some analysis and investigations I did in the runtime area, where, believe me, I was able to reduce hours. It will usually take me hours of investigation down to minutes and get immediately where I needed to be. So right now, you see, look also how it reacts. No, even when it's trying to look for something and it's like, oh, okay, so I found this. Let me fall back to these other potential paths so that I can give you the answer that you need. So not doing anything and just getting all of the context I need, all of the details that I need to take a decision in a vulnerability management context.
I wanted to
will
add for a second, Emanuela, that if you can even
go.
see here, we use the word runtime. Runtime for us is really what's happening in the live environment, real-time detection of what's, and you see here, this is about vulnerabilities, but at the same time, and this is one of the differences for Sysdig is our data set and how we can correlate that and how Claude can correlate that. You see 294 in use there on the screen. Well, the in use isn't a classic CVE signal. There might be a CVE, but it's not loaded in memory. Well, because of where we sit in our instrumentation, we're able to map, oh yes, this is a known issue and it is loaded and running. And so part of that goes into this recipe of getting you the best results for what really matters and reducing exposure time. I'm not exposed to something that isn't running. And so again, I just wanted to make the point that it's all of that data that can be accessed and put together to build the picture for the user. And that's that makes kind of what we do and what we've been doing for some time valuable, even in this AI world where you're not going to have today anyway, a Claude agent necessarily on every node, right? Seeing what the node is doing. You do have Sysdig there. Sorry, just wanted to point out that what runtime is and that it's a part of this picture as well.
Absolutely. And even here is still relevant to get all of this context because you don't know who is going to take care of this. That's the other point. Knowing the context is just one piece on the story, but who is going to take care of this? Eventually, it's not me. I'm just the one investigating the vulnerability management, but Eric is the one that is going to fix this or work on this. So, for example, even here, I might want to use all of this context before proceeding with the proper remediation to, for example, create a ticket. So, why should I gather all of these wide context? And it's okay, I'm done. I knew what I needed to know, and that's it. Right, because eventually I need to hand this over to my colleague, and so it needs to get all of these context. That's why at the beginning the skill told me, look, I'm going to use these connectors out there. By the way, if I was, for example, going to use I don't know, another tracking system, I could have just say, okay, no, use this one instead. So you see, it's starting to look all of the possible places where this might be a fit. That's the other thing. Usually in the organization, you get lost. Try to understand, where do I open this ticket? Who is this for? Who is the right assignee? Which is, kind of crazy out there because sometimes you can also have, the duplicate kind of ticket. That's exactly what happened. I wanted to open a ticket for this vulnerability, but it was able to found in my organization that actually there was an open ticket for this very same image. So don't duplicate my job. That's chaos. That's exactly one of the problem that we've always had in security, noise. Not just in alerts and stuff like that, but also in trying to carry out even the usual daily stuff like this. So for example, even let me show you, because even if you look at the content of the ticket, wait, because I think it was just getting, okay, so now you should be able to see the full screen. You see all of the context that we were looking at before. So this context, It was right. It was actually already part of an existing ticket. So there were already some information out there. So I don't duplicate my job, but on the other side, what I can do is that there might be some update that I didn't know before, or my colleague didn't know, and that we just noticed because we were investigating this was still open. So that was my point. Instead of picking the first two that were closed, this was open. So eventually some more information were there. You know, I could even go on and say, yes, append the update so it would reach that card with all of these information out there. So nothing changed, but it would add all of this information. But even for the interest of time, let me actually show you what happens after. So assuming it reached all of these, I might say, okay, skip the update. I want to remediate these now. We understand there are all of these new information out there. But investigate is one part of the thing for me. I now really need to remediate this one. So it's like, okay, do you want me to actually end off to another skill that is the Sysdig remediate in this case? And of course, I will say, yes, that's exactly what I need to do. So investigation is complete. I just need to keep moving with this one. So at this point, very similar to what you saw at the beginning, since I'm now invoking a new skill, what it's doing is save the skill state. So save what I did so far so that if I resume or someone else resumes, they will know what has happened, what was investigated so far. And now finally move to the new skill, because now I asked to use the remediate one. So it's going to kind of keep all of these in memory and move on. And exactly as it did before, I can spoiler you that, is now, get ready because he's now going to present us with the usual intro, plus all of the I will do, I won't do kind of alert. So you can see same structure as you saw before, of course, different kind of context. But again, I'm aware. I know exactly what is going to happen. And right now is also checking. Of course, I connected my GitHub CLI before. It could have been anything else, GitLab or whatever tool they use. In this case, I'm using GitHub, so that is now able to actually move to the creation of the PR. And he knows again that there was a PR for this, an advisory PR. So eventually, I was indeed the right one. And I wasn't the right owner, but still, it's out there. There is something already documented. And so we built all of these as something that was partially investigated. Nothing changed since then, but the PR is still there. And even if I go to the PR, you can see that. Let me log in for a sec. Bear with me. We are a security company, so we got all of the needed steps to get there. But if you look at the content that I created for this is me. I got all of the details, or at least the colleague that is for whom I opened this PR will know exactly what to do, because he will know the details, he will know what was exploited, he will know the reference. It will also be know about the Jira ticket that is related to this one. We're holding all of the pieces together, pieces that usually were creating lots of chaos and mess. At this point, there is just one more thing that I might want to do, and I might want to ask, okay, I'm done. Create a report in Sysdig style, because I like it. It could be your own company style, for example. So it makes sense. In Sysdig style, summarizing what we did. Because, one of the things that we wanted to have for transparency purposes, so again, governance, auditing, and being clear what is happening during this process, was also the ability to create artifacts. I know we created artifacts using Claude, using the skills. We created the PR, we created the Jira ticket. We were even able, if we wanted, to just update the Jira ticket because of the new information that we discovered. But while all of those are definitely relevant, there might be cases like, for example, when we got customers that need users that need to report to their engineering managers, platform managers, CISOs. Sometimes you just need to give a snapshot of all of these. This is what happened around an incident, or in this case, around this specific vulnerability. So even if sounds like kind of an obvious step, the reporting piece has always been one of the things that we have always needed in security. And it's like the dashboard. There is no way you're going to make that right because everybody does that differently. So the report that goes well for you eventually is not the right one for me, or it really depends on content. So while it generates this one, let me show you a couple of examples from the runtime investigation that I was mentioning before, just to give you an idea of how far and how different the experience can be according to what you need to accomplish. So let me show you this one first. In this case, I was, looking at these network policy, and in my case, my goal and the kind of point of arrival was isolate these. So first of all, I asked in that case, give me a visual overview of what we were trying to achieve out there, and give me enough details so that if I end to hand these off to a colleague of mine or to my manager, they got visibility of the rule that was involved, of course, the manifest, and finally, the live verification that I did along the way. So, okay, I know what happened. I know all of the scope and caveats, all of the things that I really need to know out there. On the other side, for example, for this one, I was doing something a little bit different because my interest in this case was to document all of the steps that I took to actually remediate this specific event that I was investigating. And in this case, for example, I wanted also to keep track of what was the state before I applied the remediation and what was the state after, so that I could tangibly uh, understand, document, and know what was the kind of contribute that AI gave to all of this process. And I even, because in that case, I really wanted to have all of the pieces in place, I even asked to generate a timeline so that I knew exactly what happened at what time and who did that. And but I didn't apply in that case. I didn't execute these. But in for the sake of a full report, I also wanted to know at least eventually some follow-up actions that I wanted to take. And those reports, both of them, are actually very different from, for example, this one. That is exactly what we just did. This is the session summary that we just ran, where we actually started with the top 5 image by exposure time, because was the criteria, the outcome that we decided at the beginning. All of the things that we did, literally all of the things. So he's doing all of the steps that we did. And what did we say? So it was like, okay, so now I know what happened. I know what that image was about. There are some tickets out there that help me better understand this, and even a PR open for that. So there are no duplicate PR or new tickets. No new ticket was created. The investigation was ended there. It took us less than 50 minutes while talking and discussing about this. That's all it took us to really understand what are the vulnerabilities we should pay attention to. I know it's a long answer to your very short question, but I really wanted to show you in action because that's really where you can see what's the difference with the usual vulnerability management process or runtime investigation or runtime remediation that you would usually do using hours or days sometimes
Wow.
to just get there.
Yeah, yeah. Wow, I should say just fantastic demo.
Thank you.
Amazing.
I
I
had a
want to
That's
lot
say
of
awesome.
this.
fun when doing this.
Every report I get from
Um,
internally. One of the things I wanted to point out is that we actually went to our internal team and said, "Hey, what would this be like for you before, and let's adjust for the after picture, right?" And you know, the point they made was, "Hey, there's usually 3 people involved. It's taking 45 minutes, 2 hours, whatever that is, and by the time you add up what we're getting paid, it's $400 per incident. And by the way, now that we're doing this in minutes, and we're only spending $3.75 in tokens." So
mm,
it's a big difference in time and my time cost as a human. And it's really, it's not like not breaking the bank on the Claude side as well.
mhm. Yeah, yeah. Wow, that was just a amazing demo, and I think it was just so gripping because, it was like watching a little movie unfold little by little. And I love the report at the end, talking about dashboards. Who needs dashboards when you've got like such detailed and beautiful reports like this at the end of some incident? This is amazing.
You know who
Uh,
loves these is like CISOs because they have to stand up and represent how are we
yeah,
doing? Are we covering things? These are easy to read, easy to present to others, and so it's a real it's a great
yeah.
outcome. Yeah.
I loved also that it caught that duplicate ticket and so it avoided duplicating work. That was really smart of it, which also makes me wonder, so in this case, Emanuela did like this entire, troubleshooting, triaging on her own. But how would it work if there's a team that's coordinating on a specific attack? How would that work? Let's say they all are collaborating in a Slack channel. So this being headless, I guess it can integrate with that channel and work alongside them. Have you seen anything like that? Anything to comment on in terms of how the same tool can handle collaboration across more than one person?
The nice thing about all of this is that the source of truth behind the scene is always the backend. So exactly when you realized, you said it's like a movie, no? At some point of the movie, there was this scene where he was saying, "Oh, look, this is open, but actually, wait a sec, because there is already a card about that, and that card already has some context, but it's missing this new information that we found out today while you were investigating this." Because in the backend, that is the source of truth. No matter if it's UI or it's headless, it's always the Sysdig data layer behind the scene. It knows where I am, which means that if you and I are working in a team and we are investigating on the very same thing, the state of that thing will always be known so that we avoid wasting time on the same thing at the same time, but also the duplicating the effort, which is absolutely not the case while you're doing analysis like this. Also, if, for example, Emanuele is the usual assignee for some type of images out there or vulnerabilities, it will detect. So when opening a ticket or when opening the PR, it will suggest me, do you want to assign this to Emanuela? Because we realized that similar images were assigned to her. So even to avoid all of that noise and confusion, there is also these other pieces, these other element that you can actually use to get there and to be sure that we are not stepping on each other's toes, but especially creating chaos where all we need is to be fast and ordered.
All
And
right, all
I
right.
can confirm, Twain, what you're saying is completely possible in this headless world, right? Where
Mm-hmm,
either I can say, can you send a notification of what we just did to this Slack channel? Or I can have an agent that's going to do that
mm-hmm,
for me and it'll remember that, right? And so we envision that as a good way to keep people on their toes and have accountability for
mm-hmm.
what you are responsible for. Sometimes that visibility can be lost when it's buried in a JIRA ticket that not a lot of people are looking at, but let's face it, we spend time looking at certain screens, Slack being one. That is entirely possible from a workflow and use case standpoint.
Right, all right, awesome. Um, I'd love to really talk more. I've got a couple of more questions, but unfortunately, we're out of time. So I'm gonna just ask finally about just how would someone get started with this? Where do they get started? Do they need to be already subscribing to the larger Sysdig offering to use this headless release, this product, or can they go straight to this? How do they start?
They just need to have, and that's correct, a Sysdig API key. So they need to be a Sysdig customer, but that's
Okay.
all they need. So they need just to be a CC customer, and of course, on their side, using any of the AI coding agents they might prefer. Our skills, I was demoing using Claude Code, but they are designed to be compatible with all of the other agents out there. So it might be also be Codex, or it might be Cursor, it might be Gemini, whatever
Mhm.
our customers prefer to use, but they need to be CSD customers. Definitely worth it, by the way.
Okay. Okay. But could they, for example, start with this product and then explore the other Sysdig offerings? Is that a path as well?
Absolutely, because once they have a Sysdig API key, at that point they will also have access to the full Sysdig SaaS platform, traditional one. so they can explore also the other UI AI powered features inside the UI. So,
Sure.
I mean, in a fun kind of way, I'll say this, that if you're not a Sysdig customer, you can use the same experience to get started, right? The onboarding skill is there for that reason. Hey, I've got these environments. I want to onboard Sysdig. And it'll start taking you through not only do the setup for you, but then run checks against that. Yeah, everything's responding correctly. So it's transforming not just your active operational experience, but even getting started.
Right. All right. Amazing. Wow. That was a whirlwind conversation. I really enjoyed it. I think we covered a lot of ground and I didn't know time passing at all. Before I know it, we're already over time. But wow, thank you guys. Really brought the goods today. Really delivered, especially love that demo. Yeah, wow. Quite a conversation. Thanks so much for joining.
Thank you,
thank you for
Dwayne.
having us.
All right. And thanks to all of our listeners and viewers for tuning in. I hope you guys found this as exciting as I did. Go and check out the product. It looks really cool. Sysdig's Headless Cloud Security. All you need is the API key to get started and get to explore the world of Sysdig. With that, we'll end this episode, but do tune in again for the next episode where we'll be talking about something like this. We'll see you on that one. Take care. Bye bye.